Hello everyone, my name is Ethan LaFawn, and today I'll be discussing the negative health effects that correlate with robbing amongst colonies of honeybees, also known as Apis mellifera. So what is Apis mellifera? What is the honeybee? What are we looking at here? Imagine if you don't know what a honeybee is or anything like that. Maybe you don't, and that's okay. So the honeybee, which we call Apis mellifera, which is just the scientific name for it, these are very important pollinators. I have a picture included of the honeybee, and maybe you've seen a bee outside or don't know what exactly we refer to when we say honeybee, because there's bumblebees, there's other types of bees. Is a bumblebee the same thing as a honeybee? Well, honeybees, like I said earlier, we call them Apis mellifera, and this is particularly called the European honeybee because it originates from the area around Europe, and that's what we think is commonly referred to as the honeybee. And so, this particular bee in question is responsible for a large amount of pollination services on the planet, and approximately 9.5% of all the agricultural products are actually pollinated by honeybees. And that's where we get this figure from this study done in 2021 that honeybees are responsible for $166 billion worth of agricultural products annually. And they're also important products such as honey and beeswax, honey for edible stuff and beeswax for stuff like candles and everything like that. And so that's why we look into honeybees to study, and this is sort of this model organism that we look to. So Apis mellifera, or the honeybee, is prone to interspecies competition. And so when I refer to interspecies competition, I'm referring to robbing. And so robbing occurs whenever there are two colonies, and maybe one of them's weaker, maybe one of them's in poor health, but they're still producing nectar and they're still producing valuable products that other bees might see. And so once these other bees kind of take wind to what has happened in this other colony, they're going to say, hey, nectar robbing is cheaper than us producing this nectar ourselves. So let's go over there and let's take this nectar, take these other products, because this provides maximum energy while reducing energy expenditure. So like, why make it yourself when you can just take it for free from someone else? And so this picture kind of shows a swarm of bees going and attacking this sort of backyard beekeeper's makeshift nest here in this bucket where they are robbing honey and nectar. And so that's really what happens whenever we talk about interspecies competition. And I want to explain how can this robbing or interspecies competition amongst colonies affect a honeybee's colony health? And so what we're looking at is actually intra-species competition. And so this just means that it's within the same species. So we're not looking at, a honeybee and some other bee. We're just looking at Apis mellifera specifically. So, there is this disease called American foul brood, and this is this sort of nasty disease, and we'll touch on this in the other slide. But this is a very lethal disease, and what ends up happening is we have to, in America, we have to pretty much kill the entire colony to avoid it from spreading, because this is a very contractable disease that is spread by bacterial spores. And so foreign bees from other colonies are actually known to carry spores of a painobacillus if they're infected or their colony back home is infected, and that can lead to the spread of this bacterial disease, American foul brood. And so we can see that at 0 kilometers out, there is a very high number of these spores being spread, and this, of course, decreases with distance. And this is particularly nasty because if you're in one sort of beekeeper scenario, and you have all these colonies next to each other, you don't want them to spread this disease because that costs you a lot of money, and that you don't want to lose up all these colonies for it. And so you might be wondering, like, why is this disease so horrible? And let me just show you the damages caused by American foul brood. In the top corner, we can see that there is dead larvae, and this does not look appetizing at all. You do not want this in your colony because it is just so lethal for these honeybees. Just look at how horrible this is. There's dead larvae, everything's discolored, and coming from a consumer perspective, you don't want your honey coming from an apiary that has one of these colonies in it, because it's like you look at this and you think, man, this is disease, this is nasty, and it's just all around bad. And it doesn't stop with American foul brood. And in this recent study in 2021, there has been a positive correlation to robbing increasing or accelerating the population growth of this particular parasite called Varroa destructor. And Varroa destructor is a nasty parasite because it leads to very high colony mortality. It attacks all the individual bees that it gets on, and it causes pretty much the entire colony to just tank. And so we can see here that at the start of this study, there was like one or two colonies that were infected with like low populations of Varroa destructor. And so what happened was, after time increases, that there was these high level of mites being spread to other colonies within the apiary that this study occurred at. And what was happening was that there was robbing going on between these different colonies, and they were spreading because of these interspecies interactions. Like one bee would fly over with the varroa mites, and it would go into this other one, and the varroa mites would get onto other bees, and it's not good. And varroa destructor is an ectoparasite. It's a little mite, and it just kind of crawls around on the surface of the bee and leads the bee to die ultimately. So, how can robbing amongst colonies affect a honeybee's health? So, as we've discussed, robbing is a prominent behavior of competition exhibited amongst these honeybee colonies. And this robbing has potential to spread dangerous pathogens like American foul brood, which can cost the life of an entire colony. And robbing also has the potential to spread varroa mites and increase their population within a honeybee colony, which can lead to high mortality rates inside the colony. These are things that the beekeeper does not want. And so, you know, we've talked about it a little bit, but just to drive home the point, why does this matter? You might still be questioning that. And really, outside of the honeybee biology perspective of this will decrease the production of all these products that are being made within the honeybee. Think honey. Now, if you were a beekeeper and you had American foul brood being spread, and it pretty much decimated a large amount of these colonies because it's being spread through robbing, then you're going to end up losing a lot of money from this production. And as I said, this costs money as well, but I'll touch on why it also costs money in other ways in just a second. And this poor colony health, you don't want your bees to be in poor health. And just coming from like not even from a production side or an economic value, it's like these are living creatures, and we don't want them to have poor health. We want all living creatures to be in good health. Well, not all living creatures, but there has to be a balance, because we don't want our varroa destructors to be in good health, because then they cause damage to bees. But this costs money because if you have a large amount of these colonies that are used for pollinator services, that's going to end up costing money because you can't use the honeybees to pollinate. So you're going to have to research alternatives or invest in alternatives that aren't, as efficient as the honeybee. And of course, one of the most direct things is we don't want American foul brood to spread just because of how horrible of a disease it is. And these are all the literature that I have cited. And thank you very much for listening to this little mini lecture. Thank you very much.